الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Just want to cover something that I discussed in the khutbah on Friday, and it's very relevant to where we are today in society, and that is remaining human, what it means to be human. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Inna bayna yaday as-sa'a al-haraj." He said that as the hour, the final day approaches, the last day approaches, there will be much haraj. And it was the custom of the Prophet ﷺ to use words or phrases that he knew the Sahaba didn't understand. And although they spoke Arabic, this shows you that just because you speak Arabic doesn't mean that you understand Arabic. Okay? This was even with the Sahaba. And we as African American Muslims have to get this out of our mind that just because a person is an Arab, they automatically understand Islam by default. As a matter of fact, it's actually the opposite. You understand? Even the Sahaba, the Prophet ﷺ, would clearly use clear Arabic terms and they would not know what he was referring to. All right? Because words have context. You understand? That's what gives words life. Context. And if you don't understand the context, you can't possibly understand the word. All right? The Prophet ﷺ said, "Inna bayna yaday as-sa'a al-haraj," that as the hour approaches, there will be much haraj. And so the Sahaba said, "Wa mal haraj ya Rasulullah?" What is haraj? He said, "Al-qatl." He said, murder. And so the Sahaba, trying to understand where he's going with it, they said, we in our wars and battles, we may kill 70,000 people a year, may die, in battles and war. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "La aqulu qatlakum al-mushrikeen." I'm not talking about you as Muslims and you're fighting those who disbelieve. He said, I'm talking about you killing one another, Muslims killing one another. Muslims, qatla ba'dukum li ba'din, you killing each other as Muslims. And the Sahaba, they couldn't fathom that because they grew in Islam around the Prophet ﷺ, so there was a conditioning there. So to raise your hand against another Muslim, to put your hand on another Muslim was something that was unheard of. It was something that they couldn't even envision. How someone speaks about something that you can't fathom, so therefore you can't envision it. And the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ, "A'indana uquluna yawma idhin ya Rasulullah?" Will we have our intellects during that time? Will we have our intellects during that time? And pay attention to that question. They're trying to figure out how is it that a Muslim could harm or raise his sword or raise arms against another Muslim. Will we be intellectually competent? Will we have all of our faculties intellectually during that time? And the Prophet ﷺ said, "Tunza'u uqul ahla dhalika zaman." He said, the intellects of the people during that time will be lifted. He said, وَيُخَلَّفُ هَبَاءٍ مِّنَ النَّاسِ, and it will leave behind the most unreasonable, the people who lack common sense, people who lack rationale. يُخَلَّفُ هَبَاءٍ مِّنَ النَّاسِ, they will be the worst of people, right, during that time. He said, وَيَحْسَبُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ أَنَّهُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ وَلَيْسُوا عَلَى شَيْءٍ. He said, most of those people will think that they are upon something when they are in fact not upon anything. All right, now when you fast forward to our time today, we have people who have PhDs, people who, have these big degrees in science and biology and all of this other stuff. And these people are now creating, taking DNA from human beings, taking DNA from other fruits and vegetables and other things like this, and are now creating a different type of creatures that exist amongst us. They're breeding animals, one animal from another. A lot of the salmon today is not actually salmon. They've mixed a salmon, they've breeded salmon with another type of fish, another type of animal, to make it bigger so that they could get more money from the animal. So it's not actually, genuine organic salmon. You understand? People think, oh, I'm eating salmon, so I'm eating healthy. The salmon that you're eating is not actually salmon as you think it is. All right, the genetically modified foods. We're taking, we're creating seedless fruit. You understand? What is natural is going to reproduce itself. Watermelons do not come out of the ground without seedless. You understand? Because what is natural has a reproducing agent that will help itself self-sustain. Even as human beings, we have seeds in us that help us to reproduce, so that preserves our existence, because that's the natural process. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Noah to get on the boat, he said, "Ihmil fiha kullin zawjayn ithnayn." He said, get on the boat and carry with you one male and one female of every animal, because that is the only way reproduction can happen. You understand? Reproduction does not happen with male on male or female on female. This is how you stop reproduction. You understand? Not to mention that many of these genetically modified, substances that are put into these foods, as well as the pesticides, as well as the hormones, these things have agents in it that attack the male sperm, which is why it takes longer for men to produce children, which is why it takes a lot longer for women to produce children as well. Women are having miscarriages at alarming rates. Not only are they having miscarriages, but women are now giving birth to multiples, twins and triplets. Why? Because genetically modified food has agents in it that mutate the process of birth. So now you have a boom in women having twins and triplets because there's a mutation there. Not only that, a lot of these foods, they have hormones in it, right? They're sprayed with pesticides, they have hormones in them. And then we're wondering why women are giving birth to children, to boys that come out, and at age 3 and 4, they start showing signs of femininity because they have an increased level of hormones in them. Soy has hormones in them. These agents that they put in the food is beginning to affect children. So people say, well, I was born this way. You are absolutely right. You were born that way, not because of God, but because of what your parents were digesting while she was pregnant with you. Understand what is happening. So going back to the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, when he said that the intellects of the people will be lifted on that day, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that no one is going to have an intellect? People are not going to be able to function in the world? No, people will have intellects, but what is the seat of intellect in Islam? The heart. You'll be disconnected from your heart. That's the only way that you can kill somebody without any fear of divine consequences, is that there's a disconnect from your heart. And when the heart is disconnected, when you are disconnected from your heart, you lose all sense of rationale. You lose all common sense, goes out the window. This is why we live in a society where a woman can have a child with a man, and then when they separate and break up, she can collect child support from him, astronomical amounts of child support from him, and then still deny him access to see his own kid. What type of heartless human being can do something like that? There's not that much pain and hurt in the world. You understand what I'm saying? To justify taking child support from the man that is beyond what you need, and on top of that, denying the man the ability to see his own kid. How could you do that? How could you live with yourself? You know how? Because there's a disconnect from the heart. So you see people doing things that are irrational. You see people doing things that you can only ask yourself, where is this person's intellect? Where you can have a guy walk into a school, an elementary school, and begin to open fire on elementary school children. I mean, just the scream of a child to a normal person, just to hear a kid scream, and you can hear the difference between a hurt cry and just a whine, or a kid wants their way. When a kid falls and there's that pause in their voice, and then they let it out. You as a parent, as a sane thinking person, even if you're not the child's parent, you are affected by that. That affects you. But to have someone walk into a school and begin opening fire on teachers and children, there's a disconnect there. And the disconnect is from the heart, which means that you lose all sense of rationale. This is where that disconnect comes from. So as we are moving further and further in this technologically advanced world that we're in, the advancements in technology is separating us from our hearts. And so now we function like robots. It's the only way that a police officer can show up on a scene of a kid with a gun, and 17 seconds later, that child is dead. That means that you asked no questions. You didn't ask the kid to put the gun down. You didn't say anything. You pulled up to the scene, you pulled out your gun, and you fired on a 13-year-old kid. Tamir Rice. You opened fire on a kid. That's the only way that can happen. There's a disconnect there. And so therefore we begin to function like robots. That's the age that we're in now. We're functioning like robots because there's a disconnect from the heart. In Islam, we are encouraged to nurture our hearts, right? The remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does what? Soften the heart. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Isn't it with the remembrance of Allah that, hearts find tranquility, hearts find peace? We are encouraged. The Quran says, "Inna fi dhalika ladhikra liman kana lahu qalb." Indeed, in this Quran is a reminder for the one who has a heart. You can't talk to someone about religion if they are not connected to their heart. If they're not spiritually centered, the conversation about Islam is useless. And you can tell when a person is deserving of an Islamic conversation. We're talking about Muslims here. And when a person, you can't even discuss Islam with them. You find people who are just robotic in their approach to Islam. Hey, you got to do this. This is the sunnah. And it's like, dude, I can't even talk. You don't even see me as a human being. I can't even talk to you about religion. Don't talk to me about Quran and sunnah. Don't talk to me about Quran and sunnah because everything with you is theoretical. It's by the book. You function like a robot. You're not even seeing me as a human being. The way you talk to me, the way you approach me, the way you call yourself educating me. This is what we have become, a nation of people who are disconnected from our hearts. And this is our punishment as a nation of people for interrupting the natural order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed this creation with. Our lives, as the Quran was designed to keep our lives in harmony with the world that we live in. So when the world is now being tampered with, it begins to affect us as human beings as well. You guys following me? Being able to feel is to be human. If you feel nothing, then you're not even human. And we've numbed ourselves to this environment that we live in because of all of the pain and all of the frustration and all the disappointment that we've had in this world. We've begun to now numb ourselves to the world that we live in. So we deal and we function with each other as if we don't even have a heart. Even in our marriages, we function with each other as if it's what we want from the person, not what we can give to the person. That's what we've become in our marriages. What we want from the person, not what we can give. The Sahaba, when they came to the Prophet ﷺ, they said, "Ya Rasulullah, ma haqqu zawjata ahadina alayhi." He said, "O Messenger of Allah, what is the right of one of our wives over us?" What do you notice about that question? What do you notice about that question? He said, what is the right of one of our wives over us? He wasn't asking about what his right was over the person. He's asking, what does the person have over them? Because what was more important to the Sahaba is that I make sure that I give this person their rights. I'm not worried about what the person gives me. But in today's society, I don't know how many emails I get. Brother Imam, can you please tell me what are my rights in the marriage? Because all you are concerned about is what is for you. It's heartless. You can care less about what you are giving to the other person and the responsibility that is upon you in the institution of marriage to make sure that the other person has what Allah commanded you to give them. What our concern is what I am not getting and what the person is supposed to give me. This is that narcissistic, mentality that it's all about me. My entire marriage revolves around me and what the person is supposed to give me. The Sahaba were the exact opposite. He said, "O Messenger of Allah, what is the right of one of our spouses over us?" We want to make sure that when we go into the institution of marriage, that we are giving the person that we are married to their haqq. We're giving them their right. I'm not worried about whether the person gives me my right or not. I want to make sure that when I do this, that I am free of blame in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that I gave this person their rights. So, the seat of all common sense and rationale in Islam is the heart. And the more and more we become, technologically advanced as a society, the more detached from our hearts we become. We're now, emotions have been replaced with emojis. So you no longer have to tell the person that I love you. You can just send a heart. As a matter of fact, on the iPhone, when you type in I love you, a heart automatically comes up. Right or wrong? An emoji heart comes up. So therefore, the words I love you have been replaced with just a heart. And you send that to your spouse. And that's all you have to do. And for some people, that's good enough. Don't accept that. Don't accept that. No, don't send me an emoji. Tell me. Express that human emotion, because that's what makes us human. To feel is to be human, and to feel is to be, showered with the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are numb, I feel sorry for you, because that means that you're not even human. You're not even functioning as a human being. We've become a society of robots. That's what we've become. The only way that you can turn a human being's electricity off, you work for a company where you turn an individual's electricity off in the middle of winter. I'm sorry, sir, I have to disconnect you. In the middle of winter. You have to be a heartless. And how do you live with yourself after you do something like that? How do you go home and go to sleep knowing that you just cut somebody's electricity? And someone can say, well, that's my job. That was the dictates of my job. I had to, but then that means that now you're giving precedence over what your job dictates, over what your heart dictates. You see how that works? We are now obeying systems. We become a part of a matrix, part of a system that dictates that we function like human beings. And because of a job, because of money, we have now forfeited our ability to be human and interact with other human beings the way we were designed to interact, for money and to function like complete robots. That's what we are. The Prophet ﷺ, in ending, he was holding his son. His son Ibrahim died. He was 18 months old. This incident shows us the human side of the Prophet ﷺ, but there was a comment that he made during this incident that drives home the point that I'm making. His son, he walked into the room and the wet nurse was caring for his son, and he grabbed his son in his arms, 18 months old. If you have any young ones, I want you to look at your child at 18 months old and just imagine that limp body in your arm and that kid taking its last breaths in your arm. The kid is grasping for air, taking his last breaths in the Prophet ﷺ's arms. And the Prophet is crying like profusely. And his companion Abdurrahman ibn Auf turns to him and he says, "Wa anta ya Rasulullah?" He said, "Even you cry, O Messenger of Allah?" And the Prophet ﷺ looked at him and he said, "Ya Aba Abdurrahman, innaha rahmah." He said, "Oh Abdurrahman," he said, "this is mercy." To feel anything is mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To not feel would mean to not be human. I'm a human being. What do you mean, do I cry too? This is my son dying in my arms. But this is why he uttered that mentality, is because people in leadership, people tend to think that they don't suffer pain like normal people. Right? You probably look at me and you're thinking, oh, his marriage must be perfect or his life must be perfect. Like as if it's almost, it's sad because some imams or some people in positions of authority actually live up to other people's expectation because they are afraid of being human. They are afraid of being human in the eyes of the people who revere them. I am not one of those people. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I feel pain just like any other individual. As a matter of fact, the woman who killed the Prophet ﷺ, right? The Jewish woman who gave him the meat that was poisoned. What did she say when he asked her, "Why did you do this to me?" She said, "I wanted to see if you were a real prophet." He said, "How?" He said, "Because if you were a real prophet and you ate the meat, then you wasn't going to die." It's like, it's poisoned. What do you mean? I'm human. What do you mean I'm not going to die? You understand? You see how people make you out to be like some subhuman, like you're not even human, like you're not supposed to be human. And so the Prophet ﷺ statement to Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he said, Ya Abdurrahman, innaha rahmah. This is mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me to even shed a tear. You live in, we were talking about young people, we were talking about the young people in some of the inner cities today and how they murder relentlessly. They murder one another without any concern for human life, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said that if you kill a person, كَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا, it's as if you killed all of mankind. What does that mean? That means that if you have the gall, the audacity to take a life, then that means that you have respect for no life. So that means that you have actually killed all of mankind. Taking one life, meaning having no reverence for one life, means that you have no reverence for any life. Right? The judge usually says that you have no reverence, no respect for life. Right? That's what the Quran is saying. 1439 years ago. If you take a life, you have the audacity to take a life, that means that you don't respect any life. Because if any human being did to you what that individual did to you to take his life, you would take their lives. This is the society that we live in. Disconnected from their hearts. So it's very important that we, learn how to cultivate and nurture our hearts, that we stay in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we stay around people who give good energy, positive energy, spiritual energy. We stay around people who have good vibes. Absolutely, that's very important. Stay in environments that have good vibes, because when you become desensitized to murder, when you become desensitized to what we see going on in our society, it causes you to be numb. That's the desensitizing process. You are numb to it. It doesn't bother you anymore. And when that happens, then know that you've become disconnected. As long as you feel something, right? One time my wife said something to me. She said, the moment I stop caring about you, like, we tell women, stop being so jealous or whatever the case may be. And my wife said that my jealousy is actually an indication that I care. She said, the moment I stop being jealous, the moment I stop caring, is the moment I stop loving you. Know that. The moment I'm no longer jealous, because we want to get rid of the emotion because of how uncomfortable it makes us feel, right? Like, stop being so jealous, right? Because it makes us uncomfortable. That's human emotion. That's what it's supposed to do, right? Shakespeare said that woe be to the person who tries to make emotion seem rational. It's not supposed to be rational. It's raw emotion. Raw emotion. It's not supposed to be rational. But we're uncomfortable with it. So we try to remove it from the narrative altogether. Just stop being so jealous. Meaning we just want you to just accept. If I want to take another wife, I want you to just accept it and be happy for me. Then you're trying to remove emotion from the narrative. And she said, the moment that I no longer feel jealous is the moment that I no longer care. If I don't care, then love is gone. I don't love you anymore. So understand what we're asking of our spouses when we say, stop being so jealous. You're basically telling her not to be human. You're basically telling her to remove the main component that actually makes us who we are, and that is our connection to our hearts. Brothers and sisters, learn how to unplug with social media. Learn how to unplug with, technology. Learn how to go back and, and engage with your family, engage with yourself in natural ways that we used to engage before there was a such thing as an internet. Many of our youth will never know what it means to be without internet. Anywhere we go, my son, if there's no Wi-Fi, he loses his freaking mind. Abby, there's no Wi-Fi. I'm like, duh. Like, find something to do. It's nothing to do. They live in a world where they don't know what life is like without the internet. You understand what I'm saying? That is crazy. They live in a world where they don't know what it is to be without the internet. We remember when you couldn't call somebody until you got home. You got a page, you had to find the nearest payphone, or you had to wait until you got home. You got home, you checked all your messages when you got in the house. Now you get all your messages right on your cell phone. You know, we understand that, those of us who grew up in that era. But this generation, they don't even know what that means. And we have to be the ones to give them that balance, inshallah ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I don't know if there were any questions, if you guys had anything. Do you guys online, do you guys have any questions? Do you guys have any questions online? I guess not. Okay, we'll stop here.